I am Vinnie Tortorich, folks. Your good intentions have been stolen, but don't worry. I'm here to help you get them back. You may be soft and succulent at the beginning of this process, but hang in there. Before long, you will be lean and mean, guaranteed. Just like the guy on the other mic today. This guy is about as lean. Well, he's not mean, but he's about as lean as you can possibly get. And man, the conversation is really apropos for today and what's been on my mind lately because of something that happens. But let me bring him in, and then we will talk about who he is. Folks, he's been on the show before. My buddy, Robert Sikes. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. Always a pleasure chatting with you, brother.
Robert, I've always been fascinated by bodybuilding from the time I was a kid. I mean, it's what got me into the gym at a very young age down in Southern Louisiana. And, looking at those old magazines back then, Weeder used to put them out and everybody else, most of the photos were black and white. Back then they would still show photos of Steve Reeves and I'm talking about 1970 or so, 71. You would still see Steve Reeves or any of those guys, Mickey Hargitay, who I ended up becoming friends with before he died. And then the young guys were coming up. Franco Columbo, a very young Arnold Schwarzenegger, Don Draper, all these guys. Boyer Coe lived near where I was working out. These guys were in the magazines, right? And I was fascinated with it. And I chronicled this in my book. I was kind of a loser kid. I didn't have many friends. I was, that guy, right? I was goofed on at school. I had a speech impediment, you name it. I had every problem. And I found the gym. This guy, Joe Bonadonna, brought me in to this little cinder block building with a tin roof. You can only imagine how hot that was in Louisiana summer. And we did some sweating in there. And I was just mesmerized by Joe. And he had these other younger guys, younger than him in there. One was named Charlie. One was named Duck. And of course, that was Joe's younger brother, Meatball. And these older men became my friends. Joe died before he was 65. Joe abused steroids his whole life. And he always, I think it's because that Italian thing, my mom and dad they grew up with Joe. They were all good friends together. He wasn't about to turn Marie's son into a steroid head. So it was never, I didn't know it. I didn't know what they were doing. They were just older men. I was very young. I was naive. I didn't know. By the time I hit 13 and 14, I was really building up and doing well. And I would see, the other guys in the gym, including Joe, man, they had big, giant muscles like the guys in the magazines, right? They were doing steroids. Joe, his liver gave out. My mom saw him 2 nights before he died. He was still walking around, and then the liver just went, he had jaundice, and he was gone. Just the other day, another one of the guys, I'm not going to mention his name, but another one of the guys in that group, 69 years old. A lot of the guys were younger than Joe. Joe would have been 85 had he lived. This guy's 69 years old, 9 years older than me. And I used to look up to this guy and go, my God, he is a Greek god. This guy, his body mimicked that of a very young Frank Zane, right? That body, that look, the look I've always loved, that Frank Zane look. He wasn't overly built. It was just that every muscle was in the right place. The symmetry was there. He was able to beat Arnold Schwarzenegger for Mr. Olympia without having that amount of mass. We all know that. As Arnold famously said, a man with chicken arms beat me, right? I didn't realize that all of these guys were taking drugs. until I realized it, until they started, Joe never came to me but some of the other guys would say, you're doing really well. If you take this stuff, you'll be doing better. And
Hmm.
something told me not to. I talked to Joe about it, and Joe said, don't do it. Don't do it. You'll get hooked. Don't do it. This is a man who was helping me in the 1970s when I was very young, 16, 17 years old, saying, I'm not going to allow you to do this. I always stayed away from it. But I was mesmerized. And now another one is dead from that gym. No longer with us. I asked my mom to try to figure out what happened to this guy. My mom called his friend and said, oh, he's been sick for a long time. He's been having trouble for a long time. He hasn't been able to walk for a long time. Does this sound like what a 69-year-old man should be able to do?
No,
Um, no. So that's why whenever I'm talking to Robert Sikes, people will say, wait a minute, he's got big old muscles and he's ripped. He's got to be taking something, but in fact, you're not. Is that correct?
that is absolutely correct. Yeah.
All right. So we've done this before, Robert, but I got to do it again. Have you ever taken steroids?
Nope. Never take steroids.
All right. How old are you?
I'm 31 now. I'll be 32 in October.
Okay. Still got a lot of testosterone running through your veins.
Yep.
I've seen pictures of you when you've been ripped,
Mm-hmm.
and you are about as ripped as they get. How do you do it?
Honestly, man, the ketogenic diet. I mean, I've been doing bodybuilding for about 14 years now, and I did the first half of that 14-year stint traditionally with, lots of carbohydrates, lots of protein, very low dietary fat. And I got really lean then too. Like, I don't want to take away from that. Like, a lot of competitors get super shredded with a traditional bro diet of sorts, but they don't really tell you what happens behind the scenes with that. They all walk around like zombies. Their testosterone tanks, their hormones shut down. And they feel miserable. They have a lot of disordered eating tendencies. They have a negative relationship with food. They binge, they purge. And I did all that stuff. And then I started doing keto about 8 years ago. And that
No. Go back, because I used to be down in Gold's Gym,
Uh-huh.
and things get pretty. I've seen guys get in fights.
Oh yeah.
I've seen guys faint on uh, treadmills. I've seen everything happen.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see any of that? Did any of that happen to you?
It didn't happen. Well, the disordered eating certainly happened to me when I was doing that traditional protocol. Like, my first prep, I went from 230 to 150 in 12 weeks. I lost 80 pounds in 12 weeks, lost a bunch of muscle in the process, bunch of body fat. But after that first show, which I won, I got really lean, but I just went off the rails, man. Like, I ate everything inside. I put on 20 pounds in 24 hours. And that's kind of like what led to the downward spiral for me around my psychology towards food. But yeah, I mean, I've competed with people that literally had to step off stage because they were cramping up so bad because they were dehydrated and not monitoring their electrolytes properly, and then just not doing things healthy. And when you put all that work and you can't even compete because your body's malfunctioning, that's certainly not a healthy way to go about the sport. So yeah, I'm trying to present an alternative to that method that I think is superior, and also certainly much healthier.
Yeah, I look around now and you see, I don't know if you noticed, but like a year or so ago, I want to say 29 or 30 IFBB pros died, like right before they went on stage.
Yeah.
These young kids, people your age and even younger, are dying.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're dying to look a certain way on one day. And one of the things I used to say when I was back in, when I say Gold's Gym, folks, I'm talking about the one in Venice Beach. I'm talking about, is also known as the Mecca, right? And I used to be down there, and I'd see all these guys, right? That I was down there during the Dorian Yates years, although he wasn't here, he was in England, but all the guys that was going to compete against him and all those years. And you would just see what was going on, and it just wasn't good, and it wasn't pretty. And you would see these guys as they would melt down, lose the big gut, lose all of the weight that they were carrying because they would just stop eating carbohydrates. And then they would start getting the shrink wrap look, as it's called. And then they start painting. So the smell in that gym would change, right?
Yeah.
You guys paint yourselves, and you got to keep painting yourself over days and days, and the smell, because oh God, the damn smell from their bodies. It was like they were dying.
Yeah.
Um, and then you would see them like the day before. I mean, you could see the muscles in their jaw, right? You can see every striation. You can, as I used to jokingly say, you can see the mitochondria swimming under their skin,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's how tight these guys were. And then they would go off. You wouldn't see them for a few days. They would have the competition. And you see them a week later, and they were white and bloated. When
Yep.
I say white, all the tan was off, all the spray tan, and they were bloated. They looked like just fat people. Am I making any of this up?
No, man, you're on the money. Like I see that every year I compete. I see that same thing unfold. It's not like the way people make it. They do it in a very unhealthy manner. Like they have these extremes, and they don't have a good relationship with food. It can be a very unhealthy sport. It's oftentimes more so an unhealthy sport than a healthy sport.
Yeah. The healthiest people in the world, like, aforementioned, my coach, he dead. You know, my parents never smoked and never drank, but my parents ate like shit and never worked out. And they're both still alive right now. They
Mm.
grew up with Joe, with my coach. Now a 69-year-old guy is dead, and I'm looking at that going, this is not why we get into this. At least that's not why I got into it. My reasons have changed over the years. When I was a kid, I just didn't want to get my ass kicked. And then I kept it up because I was an athlete. But then you look around and go, why should I keep doing it? Oh, wait, I want to have longevity. I want to have something. I don't want to not be able to walk and then die by the time I'm 69.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What made you heard me talk about why I never took drugs. What made you decide never to go the drug route? Because it's right there. You're
Yeah.
building up. It's got to be right there. Something happened to you the same way it happened to me.
Well, I was always seeing pretty good results without the drugs. Like I was really impressed with what I was able to do in the complete absence of the performance enhancing drugs. And I was fortunate enough for the doors to open to the sport of natural bodybuilding. So natural bodybuilding doesn't get near as much, press time as traditional bodybuilding because they're not the freaks with that sport. Like you don't see people walking around at 300 pounds shredded in natural bodybuilding. People don't pay to see the freaks. People pay to see the freaks in like the IFBB. They don't really have that type of money backing natural federations. So there's not ever going to be that much exposure with it. But natural bodybuilding federations have come up as the need has arisen for them because so many people are abusing the performance enhancing drug side. So I've had that as an outlet to compete in. So all of the competitions that I do within that realm, like they polygraph you, they urinalysis test you, they do random drug tests throughout the year. So they've basically sanctioned this outlet for people to compete naturally against other natural competitors. So having that as an option for me was a saving grace.
There's 2 or 3 different companies putting on natty shows, right?
There's a bunch of them now. I mean, there's a few main ones like the OCB, the WNBF, NANBF. There's a couple main federations. The WNBF is the one I primarily compete in, and that one's got pretty much the strictest ban on banned substances. Like if you are caught using banned substance, I mean, you're banned for 10 years. Like you can't compete for 10 years.
Yeah.
So it's strict in that regard.
I was watching a documentary on natties, natty folks, natty bodybuilding. And I realized it was bullshit 5 minutes in
Mm-hmm.
because Mike O'Hearn was in the thing.
Yeah.
And you don't have to say anything about Mike O'Hearn if you don't want to, but I will. We used to, believe it or not, back when I first moved to LA, we belonged to the same modeling agency.
Oh, yeah.
Basically they were using me for my abs. My abs got a lot of work and that kind of stuff. But Mike O'Hearn was in that group and a bunch of other people. And people always ask me, do you think Mike O'Hearn is natural? And it's like, no, he's never been natural. And if he was, even at his age, I'm shocked that he's able to keep going the way he's going at his age.
Yeah.
Right? That's the part. It's like, man, he must have first off, he's genetically gifted, but there's no way he's keeping that amount of muscle on without doing something. And I said, here's the deal. Mike O'Hearn would, if he just joined any of these federations, he would win hands down. Why isn't he doing it? Right. The reason being is he won't pass he can't pass the test.
Yeah.
Would you agree, disagree, or do you want to stay quiet on it? Where are you on Mike O'Hearn?
I mean, I don't know Michael Hearn personally. Like I obviously know of Michael Hearn. I've consumed some of his content. I mean, if I was a betting man, I would say that he's probably not natural. But at the same time, I have seen some crazy physiques in the Natural Federation, like Doug Miller. I don't know if you're familiar with Doug Miller, but yeah. I would put Doug Miller up against Michael Hearn. And Doug Miller is supposedly natural and he's competed within Natural Federation. So, I mean,
is he that guy, big, tall guy? He's a fireman. Is that?
He's not super tall, no. I don't know how tall he is, but I wouldn't describe him as a tall guy. He owns Core Nutritionals, it's a supplement company. But he's a freaking monster.
What's his name? Give me his name.
Doug Miller.
I gotta look him up.
Yeah, look him up. I mean, he's a freak, man. But he's competed in all these natural federations, you know, and there are definitely some natural competitors that are very, very massive. I mean, I'll never be the biggest guy on stage. My goal is to be the leanest guy on stage, and I feel like I can, you know, achieve that goal for sure.
Yeah, I know this guy. I know. Yeah, I've seen this guy around. Yeah, this guy can, you know, he's got the kind of genetics where he can literally compete with, you know, just open categories, in my opinion.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So, yeah. All right. So, how do you do it? Let's talk about it. You know, there's several different methods. I can make a case. You know, I'm friends with Ben Bokikio, Fred Hahn. I don't know if you know these names. They do the old Mike, I call it the old Mike Mincer method, where, you know, they're in the gym for feels like 5 minutes twice a week. Mike Mincer never worked out more than 2.5 hours a week. The aforementioned Dorian Yates. These people, you know, hit it and quit it. You know, go to failure, quit it, move on, let the muscle rest, build up, go in, try again. Or you can do every day, different muscle groups. What say you? What are you doing?
I played around with a lot of different lifting protocols, programming techniques, and honestly, what I've been doing lately for the past 6 months or so has been a full body split, which I always kind of talk shit about in the past. I always have done a traditional body part split, but for the past 6 months, I've been doing this body part split in which I go in usually about 5 days a week, and I train one exercise per muscle group every single day. So like I'm hitting legs 5 times a week. I'm hitting arms 5 times a week. And as a natural, I'm getting much more training frequency within those muscle groups, which I think is beneficial. And I'm getting more overall total training volume, which is also good. I'm still going very intense because since I'm only doing one exercise per muscle group, I'm not overly fatigued the next day when I come in to train on that muscle, which is also nice. And for me, traveling as much as I am right now, it allows me to not have any holes in my workout program. For instance, if I was doing a body part split and I was traveling on a Friday and Friday's my back day, then I've got to make up a back day somewhere. Whereas with this full body split, I'm training everything every time I train. So everything's getting stimulated, which is good.
All right. So you go in on Monday. Mm-hmm. Give me the workout.
I mean, it's pretty intuitive with it, but an example day for me on a Monday would be like, I'll do, you know, like an incline dumbbell press for chest. I might do, you know, front lateral plate raise for shoulders. I might do deadlifts for back, squats, or, you know, hip thrusters or something for legs. And then a calf, like old superset calves with pretty much everything. I'll do like a bicep curl and a tricep extension of some sort for the arms. And that's an example workout there. And I'm typically done within about an hour and 15 minutes, probably. I'm supersetting a lot of it. I'm typically training 4 sets, 5 sets with most exercises in the 8 to 15 rep range typically.
Okay. So if you do that on Monday, obviously you're not going to choose. I'm saying obviously, I could be wrong. You go in on Tuesday, you're hitting the same muscle groups. Are we doing something different? Are we doing leg press, squats, and
yeah, same muscle groups, but different exercise. So instead of doing squats for legs, I may do, you know, I might do lunges. Instead of doing deadlift for back, I may do pull downs or something like that. So same muscle groups, but just different exercises.
You don't find that Are you worried about tendonitis or overwork injuries or anything like this? Has any of this happened?
No, honestly, man, like I haven't had any injuries. I mean, I say that I did sumo deadlifts the other day and I kind of pulled my back, but I was pretty aggressive with that. But I don't have any injuries as a result of that full body split. And honestly, as long as you're eating and getting enough rest, it's pretty hard to overtrain. Like everybody's throwing this overtraining out, and I think a lot of it just stems from people's lack of desire to put in the work. But if you're eating ample nutrition at a caloric surplus and getting ample rest, it's really hard to overtrain.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never bought into it. I'm glad to hear someone's doing it and doing it successfully. I always worry, especially at my age. I would never tell anyone to do it. You're well trained and you've been training now for half your life. That's a
Mhm.
whole lot different, folks, than if you're starting out, don't go do this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you got to, this is something this man's been training his whole life. He's finely tuned machine. At my age, I wouldn't do it because I'm worried about tendonitis. I hit something too often, boom, you're hurt
Totally.
again. But yeah, if you can do it, and yeah, more power to you. If you didn't do that, what were you doing before that?
So I've also had a lot of luck with it's like an 8-day rotational split. So basically with that, I have like a like each muscle group is getting targeted twice a week instead of every day I train. And one of those focuses is with a heavy emphasis, so I'm doing fewer repetitions but a heavier load. And the other day I train it is with more of a hypertrophy focus with a little bit lighter load and a higher rep count. So with that, I'm basically cycling through 8 days in which I have 6 training days, 2 off days amongst that 8-day block. And then every muscle group is getting targeted twice, once with a heavy, once with a hypertrophy focus. And that's worked pretty well for me as well.
That sounds closer to what I do.
Yeah.
I'm old school that way. I do push pull legs, take a day off, sometimes 2 days off, come back, start over, rinse and
Yeah.
repeat.
There's a
Um,
lot of different ways to skin the cat, as the saying goes. Like a lot of people get really hung up on the perfect training protocol. But if you're going to the gym, if you're busting your ass, if you're recovering, if you're eating quality foods, then I mean, you can get away with a lot of things in the gym. I mean, the main thing is just to simply get to the gym and put in the work.
yeah. So that dovetails nicely into talking about nutrition because I'm very interested in talking to you about nutrition. But before we do that, folks, let me tell you about Villa Capelli olive oil. Villa Capelli olive oil is the longest running sponsor of this show. Listen, I don't think you're going to get any argument out of Mr. Sikes over there when it comes to olive oil. It's the healthiest food on the planet. I drink it. I just drank an ounce before I came down here to start doing these podcasts. Just drank an ounce of oil, put a little salt in it. It was Villa Capelli. Listen, we're allowed to cut olive oil in this country up to 40% and still call it 100% pure olive oil. That's a fact. I'm not making that up. Go read the book Extra Virginity. It's in there. UC Davis has the olive oil study where they talk about it. This is a fact. Villa Capelli is 100% pure olive oil. You want the good stuff. Now, listen, the good stuff ain't cheap. So, the way you save money is before you go to checkout, put in promo code Vinnie, VINNIE, and you will save what? Oh, just 10%. And if you spend over $125 after that discount, you'll get free shipping. So, it's very heavy to ship 3 liters of olive oil. So, you want to save more money. Spend about $145. Get that discount and the free shipping. Boom, that's how you do it. Villa Capelli. Yes, we do run them out of oil. We people buy it on my suggestion. So if they don't have it, get on their mailing list and they'll let you know when it's back in. Villa Capelli, promo code Vinnie, no wimpy Y, VINNIE. We're talking to the guy who has the Keto Savage podcast. It's ketosavage.com. He's got a book called the Ketogenic Bodybuilding book. And he also makes a product, and we're going to be talking about his product here in just a minute. Keto Brick. I've actually tried it before. Robert, let's go right into food.
Okay.
We know you eat a low carb diet. You mentioned earlier in the show that you were that guy that was getting into an eating disorder. You would get smooth and get big and then get small for competition. You seem to always be somewhat ripped around the clock now. What are you doing?
Honestly, man, I've been strict keto for the past 8 years. Like I don't deviate. I don't add carbs. I don't do fruit and honey. I don't do all these other things. I just stick to strict keto. That's worked really well for me. And depending on where I'm at in my building and cutting cycles, I'm going to be manipulating my macronutrients accordingly. So I'm in a cut phase right now. I'm going to be competing later this year. So I'm meal prepping all my meals. I'm tracking all my macros, get everything dialed into a T. But even in a building phase, when I'm at a caloric surplus and trying to put on more mass, it's all still strict keto. I'm just simply eating more food at that point. So more fat, more protein, more calories, but all pretty much the same types of foods.
But even in the surplus, you don't get fat the way bodybuilders get fat. And folks, if you know what we're talking about here, the average bodybuilder, you would not recognize them. They look fat.
Yeah.
Until that last 6, 8 weeks before competition. Do you ever get like that?
No, when I was eating carbs, I tried bulking up. I did a really aggressive bulking phase and I bulked up to 230 pounds. And I'm only 5'7", 5'8", so it wasn't a good look for me. With keto, I've tried doing, stints of 6,000 plus calories a day, and I cannot for the life of me get beyond about 185, 190 pounds. And it's always a much healthier physique and look and conditioning. Like I still have very visible abdominal definition throughout the entire building phase with keto, whereas I never was able to achieve that when I was eating a bunch of carbs.
Give us now this is when you're building up. Give us an average day of what it looks like food wise and break it down. And don't say, well, I have these many macronutrients of fat and protein. What does it look like? I eat 10 eggs in the morning. I eat bacon. What are you doing? Let's hear it.
Yeah, so in a building phase, I'm usually around 3,000 to 3,500 calories, and that's typically coming from, I'll have heavy cream in my coffee or tea. I'll have several eggs, bacon in the morning. I'll make like a chaffle or something like that if I want to have a little texture to it. I'll have a keto brick at some point throughout the day, usually after training. That's 1,000 calories there. And then I'll have the rest of my calories coming from pretty much just good quality meat sources. So maybe it's a steak, maybe it's, a pound of ground beef. Maybe it's some yogurt or something of that nature, some full fat yogurt, unsweetened yogurt, but usually just a lot of animal based products, man. Eggs, meat, steak. That's pretty much my staples.
Sounds like we eat about the same thing, almost identical. Of course, I stick to my stuff, my NSNG foods, ultra fat, but you have the keto brick, and I remember you sent me a couple of keto bricks at one. Did you send them to me, or did I get them when I was at KetoCon that year? I can't remember.
I'm not sure. It's been a long time ago. We've had several new flavors come out since then. I'm not sure what I said.
So talk about them. Talk about your product.
Yeah. So when I was doing my first ketogenic bodybuilding prep in 2017, which is when I went pro, at that point, there wasn't really any keto products on the market. There wasn't any marketing around keto. And I wanted to find a way to streamline my meal prep and hit my macronutrient goals more efficiently. So I started formulating different products, and I built and formulated the keto brick. And it was never a product that I intended to sell. It was just something that I was using to make my meal prep easier. But I was documenting my entire prep on YouTube at the time, and people kept asking about this brick. Like, where could they get it? What was the recipe? Could they buy it? So I just decided to kind of roll up my sleeves with my girlfriend at the time, wife now, and start a food product company. And Keto Brick was born. We launched that in 2018. We've kept the production in-house from day one. So we're making these things ourselves, and we're shipping them all over the world. And people seem to be loving them. So we're going to keep making them. And I eat one every single day. So I'm a believer in it for sure.
Tell us what's in it.
The main ingredient is raw organic cacao butter. So cacao butter is the highest source of naturally occurring stearic acid. Most people think of beef suet when they think of stearic acid, but cacao butter is actually a greater source of stearic acid. And depending on the flavor, we have some, with a grass-fed whey protein. We have some with a vegan plant-based protein for those that have whey allergies. And then we've got some that have a nut butter in there, MCT oil powder. Again, just kind of depends on the flavor, but the main ingredient is that raw organic cacao butter.
Now I remember the bars being pretty thick and pretty big. How many ounces to a serving, and how many calories to that?
So I eat a whole brick a day, and I consider one brick a serving, and that's about 150 grams. So a lot of people in the backpacking space like it because it's really calorically dense, right, in a small shelf-stable form. But a lot of people cut them into pieces, or they melt them down into smaller molds. So a lot of people will melt them down into 10 little briquettes, so to speak. So each one's 100 calories. So you can kind of partition it however you need to, really.
Yeah, I remember getting it and enjoying it. And you don't put any kind of sweetener or sugar in them. I can't remember if you did or not. It's been a few years.
No, so we don't add any additional sweeteners. There's a stevia in the protein powder that we use, but we don't add any additional sweeteners, and it's just the stevia that's in the protein powder.
Got it. Um, Speaking of protein powder, do you take any supplemental protein, any whey protein, casein?
No,
Um,
I haven't done that for years, man. I did that, I'm living and dying by the protein powder back in the day, but now I don't do any protein powder apart what's just in the brick itself. But a lot of people, like, it's not beneficial to consume protein in isolation. Like, you want to have dietary fat with your protein.
Right.
So just slamming a protein shake with water is just not really beneficial.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to bring that up because so many people just do that. They'll go, "Oh, let me just pour some protein. I'm getting everything I need." And as I tell folks all the time, they'll say to me, "Do you ever have anyone just take protein powder?" And the answer is yes. When someone calls me, I get a lot of calls from people with cancer and everything else, and they can't eat anything else. I'll say, "Look, get some protein. If you can gut it down, gut it down. At least you're getting, the branched chain amino acids and everything else from the whey protein. It's bastardized, but it is what it is."
Yeah,
But other than that, I really don't recommend it all the time. Um, I tell people, like, if you can get it from eggs, if you can get it from meat, that's where you want to get it from.
totally. Totally.
Um, what do you think your macronutrient percentage is per day? Fat, protein breakdown.
In a building phase, I'm pretty close to a 1-to-1. So about 1 gram of fat to 1 gram of protein, which puts me at about 68 to 70% of my calories coming from dietary fat. When I'm in a cutting phase, like I am now, I'll modulate that throughout the cut. So I'll start with a higher fat ratio, gradually increase my protein until I find my protein threshold, and I start dropping both fat and protein. So all the while, calories are dropping, but my percentage of total calories from dietary fat shift a little bit throughout the prep.
When you get down to competition day, where, not the day, but the week before, what's your calorie count? What are you down to?
I'll probably be around 16 or 1700 calories at that point, but I'm having a weekly refeed, there as well. So that's just not a carb refeed if it's coming from just additional fat and protein, but it's just a higher calorie day once a week. And that's going to be around 2,500 calories to kind of make those lower daily calories a little bit more sustainable. But I'll probably be around 1,600 calories or so.
Do you find that when you do that, you start to lose energy when you get that low?
You do lose energy. I mean, you're not performing optimally per se, but it's so much better than what it was like when I was eating carbohydrates and very low in dietary fat. So most competitors will drop their dietary fat down to, 30, 40 grams a day. Their hormones start tanking. They have no sense of satiety. Their leptin and ghrelin's all screwed up. When I'm down that low in calories, it's almost like the same phenomenon of when you're doing like an extended fast. Like your ketones are cranking on all levels. Your mental cognition is even more alert. So I feel even more, alert and aware at that point. I'm just hungry still because I'm eating so little, but I don't feel like my performance from a cognition standpoint is hindered whatsoever.
Good. No, look, I tell this to people all the time. If you're going to do any of this, do it right. Bodybuilding is its own little world where you guys do crazy things.
Yeah,
You
for sure.
you eat a ton of food, you build up your body, and then we try to rip it up as much as possible for one day, and then you go back again. I'm still fascinated by it. When now, I want to say I read this somewhere or saw something about you somewhere where you said you're trying to become the most ripped person in history on the stage. Or
Yeah.
am I making that up?
No, you're on the money, man. So like I've got so I went pro in 2017 with keto, and then I was in prep in 2020, and then 1 week before the show, the pandemic canceled the show. So I didn't compete in 2020. So I haven't competed since 2017 because I typically take 2 or 3 years off in between shows. So I'm going to compete again this year, and I've got several competitions planned. I've got about 5 different competitions that I've got on the calendar, but more so than the competitions and, going pro at those events and competing on a pro stage, my goal is to be the leanest man on planet Earth for that time period. Like I'm going to be straight up leanest man alive.
I've seen you when you get tight and you get pretty tight.
Yeah, I'm
What
going to
was
be
your,
better than them.
all right. So what was your lowest body fat and how do you measure it?
So
Let's
I've measured it all different ways. In the past, I've measured, the last time I competed, I was measuring 3.3% via in-body scan. DEXA, that would have been over 4%, probably like 5% via DEXA. And then the calipers are around 3% as well. So as of now, the leanest known man has been about 4% via DEXA. So I've got to get sub 4% via DEXA to earn that title, so to speak.
I've been down as low as 7.5% DEXA, and that was scary lean. That was like scary lean.
Yeah, you're knocking on death's door when you get much lower, for sure.
Well, that was I was measured on a DEXA when I was trying to figure out what was wrong with me when they figured out I had cancer. That was the lowest I'd ever been, 7.5. And folks, listen to what he just said. When he was 4 point something on DEXA, he was measuring 3 with the calipers. The calipers are never as good. I don't care. The calipers in the best case scenario is never going to be as accurate as a DEXA scan. It's just a fact. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, the DEXA is definitely the gold standard. I guess the gold standard is technically like once you're dead, you can have an autopsy done, but nobody's going to do that for a body fat test. But yeah, I mean, I feel like DEXA is definitely the quote unquote gold standard there for sure.
If you had to get in a DEXA today, under it, what do you think you would come up with?
I got a DEXA not too long ago. So right now at the onset of my prep, I'm at about 12% via DEXA right now.
That's pretty lean.
Yeah. And my 12%, I don't know why this is. Probably just because I have enough muscle maturity now, but like my 12% looks sub 10%. Like I have, I'm pretty lean at 12%. So when I get down to sub 5%, it's going to start getting scary.
No. Yeah. People start wondering if you're sick or not.
Oh, for sure.
That's why I don't like to go too lean anymore. People go, "Oh, you look, your cheeks is caving in," and oh my God.
It's not the ideal picture of health by any means, but I'm an extremist, man. Like I like doing things that make me feel alive, and sometimes you have to feel nearly dead to feel alive.
Yeah, folks, please do not try what Robert is doing. Do not try this at home. And look, it's the same thing I used to say about ultra events. If you were doing it right, you almost kill yourself every time.
Yeah.
Right. And I remember my friend Rich Roll, noted vegan, he said to me once, he goes, I would DNF a lot, and he would say, you would do a lot better if you slowed down a bit. You wouldn't DNF as often. It's like, I said, Rich, you got to understand. I don't join these races to finish. I'm trying to win.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and if I don't win, if I come out second, third, fourth, fifth, 10th, I want to know that I left everything on that bike. I don't want to have to think about that race ever again and go, you know what? There was that moment when I eased up for 20 minutes because I was just so tired. I'm putting everything down. And by the way, it becomes, when you think about it, I'm sure your life is the same way. It becomes a metaphor for your life.
Totally.
How do you start a bar company, with your own food? You go to the nth degree. Starting your own company, as you know, is not easy. But everything you do in life, it's a metaphor. It's a metaphor for everything else you do. You never know if you're truly alive until you're almost dead. Right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
100%, man. That's how I believe I've reached the successes that I have in life. It's not been from playing it safe or, skirting the sidelines. Like I go all in on the things. I take risks, and I don't ever have to worry. I don't have to look over my shoulder and wish I had done something different or pushed a little bit harder, because there's no harder amount that I could have pushed.
I remember I was thinking about this the other day. In high school, I was talking to a guy, good friend of mine. We played football together. And the week before, it was a tight game. We were down by blah, blah, blah. They were on, we had to make a goal line stance. And we held them. We held this team. This team was marching up and down the field. We held them in the red zone, 3 yards out. They had four first downs to get in, and we held them. And then
Mm-hmm.
we dug out of that hole with the offense and we went back and scored. And after the game, I was having a hamburger with my buddy who's also in that defense. And I said, you know what? Every time we lined up, I prayed to God. And by the way, I'm an atheist now. Back then I was praying. I prayed to God that they would run my way because I didn't want to trust this to anyone else. I wanted them to run right at me because I knew in my mind I can stop them. I just knew it. Now they ran my way one of the 4 times. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't on the other plays, but I was a second late because I had to cross the field. And my buddy said to me, I'm not going to say his name now because I don't want, he might hear this. He goes, you know what? I was on the opposite side of you and I was praying to God that they wouldn't come my way because if they scored over me, I said, you see, that's the difference in life. Some guys are going to sit and go, come at me. I need to handle this. I can't trust you other 10 guys. I want to handle this. Other guys are praying, please don't come this way.
Yeah.
That's just how life works.
Yeah. I feel like, I don't know, there needs to be a crucible in life. Like you need to figure out, you need to be tested. And once you are truly tested and you've crossed that chasm and you've met that threshold and you've overcome it, the amount of self-respect and confidence that you have as a human being and what you're able to provide into this world is just far, far superior to what it would ever be if you had never been tested. So yeah, I mean, for me, business is a test, bodybuilding is a test. Like I seek out these self-imposed hardships so that I can figure out who the hell I am inside. And with that, it transcends the sport, it transcends the business, and it just bleeds into everything in my life.
Yeah. Do you have kids, Robert?
Yeah, we have one. He's going to be 1 year old next week.
Yeah. And look, they see that. They see what you and your wife are doing. You start your own business. There's that old saying, some of it is taught, some of it is caught. They're catching more than what you're teaching. They're seeing what goes on. It's just that mutation. And it matters. He's going to see daddy in the gym. He's going to see mommy working hard. That matters.
Totally.
That matters. Right. And so it's good all the way around. So you can build another good kid for the future. So thank you for that.
Appreciate it.
Anything we're leaving out before we go?
So I'm, as far as what I'm working on right now, man, I'm been hot and heavy working on a course. Basically it's a course that kind of mirrors the concepts that I've laid out in my book, but it's going to be very interactive. There's going to be 200 plus videos in it. It's been a beast of a course and it keeps getting bigger, but it's going to be basically all things ketogenic bodybuilding. That's pretty much my wheelhouse, like all things ketogenic bodybuilding. So basically working on that to get that delivered for people to put those practices into use and be able to find a healthy way to go about changing their body composition.
Love it. Folks, you can go find him at ketosavage.com. He's got a great podcast. I just recorded with him for the second time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think this is the second time you've been on this show. So anytime you have anything you want to push, anything you want to talk about, man, it's always a pleasure to have you on. So thank you.
Appreciate you, Vinny.
Hang on. I'm going to say goodbye to you off the air, folks. Andy and everybody wants me to tell you guys that NSNG Foods for the month of May, 20% off the ultra fat. You can get 20% off, promo code Vinny. This is May 2023. So if you're listening to this podcast in the future, that won't work. May 2023, 20% off by putting in promo code Vinny at nsngfoods.com on the ultra fat. So go check that out right now. We all go shopping on Amazon before you go there. Please go to VinnieTortorich.com. We have our own page. You get to see all the stuff we use here in the house. I have it all on my page, and you might want to use some of that stuff. Maybe not. Who knows? But we also have that the ebook. Debbie wants me to remind you guys of the NSNG ebook. Go check that out at VinnieTortorich.com. On behalf of Robert Sikes, my name is Vinnie Tortorich. Put life into living and do it with enthusiasm.